Well, good evening, everyone. And we want to welcome you all to our Somerville's Arts and Cultural Town Hall. My name is Joe Curtatone. I want to welcome you. I have the honor and the privilege of being the mayor of this incredible, creative, diverse, original community that we all call home in some fashion. I want to go over a little bit tonight's agenda. First, I want to thank you for your advocacy, your activism, and what you've done over the years to really speak to some of those values through different mediums, through different lenses, how you have brought life and vitality to our neighborhoods, even during the deepest and darkest economic times, and even during these difficult times, this health crisis. Arts and culture in Somerville has been medicinal for our entire community. I can speak for myself. So thank you very much. Your advocacy, your activism has done so much to heal, to vitalize, and to stabilize our community. So in terms of tonight's agenda, first I'm going to get some introductions of our panelists. We'll go over a brief presentation from myself and city staff, and we will leave some time for some brainstorming discussion at the end and some Q&A. And first, we want to thank you in advance of the many suggestions and comments you've given in advance of tonight's meeting. That has given us certainly a lot of guidance. So without further ado, let me once again introduce myself. I'm Mayor Joe Curtatone. In a second, I'm going to have my two colleagues say a few things. First, at large, City Council Will Embaum. Will, would you like to say hello?
Absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, for having this event together. I really want to thank you and your administration for putting this event together. And also thank everyone that is here tonight. I just want to say that one of the reasons that I moved to Somerville was our rich arts community. And seeing what this pandemic has caused breaks my heart. You know, some artists have already moved away from the city and others are struggling to survive. So our arts community, like you just alluded to, Mr. Mayor, is a fabric that makes Somerville unique. And we must do everything we can to support our residents. So I just want to let them know, you know, that I'm here to listen and we will continue to work, you know, with the council and, you know, our honorable mayor to do more. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councilman Barr, and I want to welcome the Ward 7 City Councilor, another champion of the arts on the council, along with Councilwoman Barr, Councilor Katiana Ballantyne.
Good evening, thank you. I'm Katiana Ballantyne. I want to thank you for establishing your arts and cultural organizations here in Somerville. I understand the value you bring to our lives personally. I know many of you. And I am with you from beginning to end to try to strategize and come up with alternatives, working with the mayor and his staff to help you through this, you know, really tough crisis. So I'm here to listen. I'll be here the entire time, and happy to talk with you all, meet with you afterwards too. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilor Ballantyne. I do want to mention for all of you who are part of this conversation and meeting that Councilor Kristen Strezzo, new councilor at large, was planning to attend this meeting but can't make it. She wanted us that we let you know that she'll be watching and the recording of the meeting and is available for follow-up questions. And I think I can say that for the entire City Council. I want to thank them for their support. There hasn't been any effort on behalf of the arts and culture and this community that the City Council has not supported or advocated for us. I want to thank them all. Next, I want to introduce Greg Jenkins. Many of you know Greg. He's the director of the Somerville Arts Council. Greg.
Hello. I just want to say thanks for all the work that you all have been doing over the years. And, you know, obviously we're here to work with you and to help, you know, with your work within the city. And we're here to listen. And we've been hearing from you. And that's why we're here. So just want to say thank you and stay strong.
Thanks, Greg. Next, I want to introduce from the Mayor's Office of Innovation and Analytics, the Director, Kristen Stelgis. That's the Somerset office. Kristen?
Hi, everyone. I'm really glad to be here. I work with Greg on some of our long-term efforts to strengthen arts and culture in Somerville. So looking forward to hearing this discussion today.
And next, I always say she probably has the most fun job, especially when the events are happening. Or I promise they're going to happen again. She's the events coordinator for the Somerville Arts Council. Yaritza Menyaba. Yaritza.
Hi. Hello, everyone, and thank you for being here. I'm excited to be here, and one day we'll get the events going again, but let's hear what we all have to say.
Thank you, Yaritza. So I do want to just go, as I would with any public meeting, is provide a little context to where we are regarding COVID, because it's impacting this conversation, so many of our conversations. Right now in Somerville, here's our present status. There is one adjustment, sadly, that we now have 40 fatalities in Somerville. And you can see where we are, the number of confirmed cases, 1284, and the number of recovered people, a little over 1,100. You know, the situation has evolved. We've worked collectively to flatten out the curve, not just in Somerville, but in the region. We thank all of you for making that sacrifice, and we continue to strive to be vigilant as we prepare now for the resurgence. In Massachusetts, as we can see, the cases, there are still cases happening. People are still becoming ill, and we have more than 9,000 fatalities, and we're about to hit the 200,000 fatality mark, sadly, here in the United States. So, but again, we've paid a steep price in blood to maintain the stability of our healthcare system, gain some control of our lives, and we're fully aware that our lives have all been turned upside down. We've all undergone an incredible amount of emotional trauma and duress because of the uncertainty and stress of the situation, and our economy has certainly been crippled, and we're trying to find our way forward as we prepare for a resurgence. Looking ahead, we can see our prevalence rate on a 14-day average is it's a little over almost 8 cases per 100,000. So our positivity rate is 0.71%. That's really good, but you know, we're seeing a lot more people getting tested, which is good. But again, it's important to keep in mind and be clear that people still are becoming ill, and there's still people dying. COVID certainly is being unrelenting to the most vulnerable in our population, Black and brown people and immigrants, our seniors. So we continue to learn more about this disease and its spread. And again, it's important that we remain truly vigilant as we think about which activities in our lives and what parts of our economy are going to reopen. We must do so with 2 guiding stars guiding our compass, and that's make sure that we continue to ensure everyone in our community remains healthy and safe, and that any reopening of our economy or our lives is sustainable. Now to the meat of the conversation. Again, I want to thank you once again for all the comments you've given in advance of tonight's meeting. Is the funding for the arts, and where are we? We want to talk about in the immediate term, in the near term, and long term. So the things we're focused on and we're working collectively on as a community in the administration and the city council. And there we're pleased to announce, one announcement we want to make this evening is that a new $500,000 investment to the Emergency Relief Fund for arts and culture. This is something we've already been engaged with the councils here on the call about. And we'll work with the city council to seek that funding and approval of transfer of monies to make that happen. We understand and are acutely aware in our economy, the negative impacts COVID has had, especially small businesses, independently operated and managed establishments who are the backbone of our local economy and our creative economy, individuals like yourself, who are, again, during the deepest abyss of the Great Recession, stabilized this community. We built upon that creativity and originality to sell some of those values and put us in the position to go through experienced up until COVID hit us. So this is something you'll be hearing more about. We're really excited about, and we look forward to working with Councilor Embar, Councilor Ballantyne, and the whole City Council. And I can tell you they've been staunch advocates for more city money to be invested in the arts. So I'm glad to work with them and all of you to make this happen. And the timeline of this will be over the next few months. We'll work to get that approval. Again, the $500,000, the new $500,000 of funding is in addition to the $120,000 designated for the Somerville Arts Council as part of the regular city budget, the FY21 budget, which started July 1st, ends June 30th. So that brings the total up to $620,000 for this fiscal year. Once we seek the transfer and it is considered and approved by the city council, they'll be available for the arts, through the Arts Council for the arts community. But I want to make an important point and clarify something. We continue to work to lobby the Commonwealth to make the CARES Fund money available to support our local artists and our arts organizations. And let me give further clarification and context. Some of you have already in advance asked us, why aren't we using CARES Fund money? And let me explain why, because it's really not transparent in how it's used. So CARES Fund money in Massachusetts comes to 3 landing spots. One is the Commonwealth, one is the city of Boston, and one is Plymouth County. So we fall under the Commonwealth, and that's an important distinction. The city of Boston has already accepted a certain section of the CARES Funding Act called Section 5, which would allow for funding to be dispersed to distributed to individuals, artists in this case, as sole proprietors, small businesses. The Commonwealth has not, and we've been advocating passionately for this, and I want to give the councils an opportunity to speak about this and the funding, the other $500,000 I just mentioned. We're working collectively, advocating to the administration and with the organizations we all sit on, in my case, the Metropolitan Mayors Coalition, the Massachusetts Mayors Association, that distinction, that section must be accepted and adopted by the Commonwealth to allow us to distribute CARES Fund money to you, in which case we would be seeking to distribute another $500,000 on top of the on top of the $500,000, the other $120,000 I also mentioned. So I just want to pause for a second because I see Councilor Mbar acknowledging that, and Councilor Ballantyne, and they've been strong advocates for this, so I want to give an opportunity to comment on that. Will, you want to go?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I really want to say I appreciate, your leadership on this. I mean, you've really been on the forefront of these issues. And as far as, like we are concerned on the council, we will make sure that we approve this with expediency. This will not be any duck and pony show, because we've been talking about our arts community for the longest time, and this is the time to take action. So I really want to thank you for your leadership on this.
Thank you. Look forward to work with you. Councilor Ballantyne.
Thank you. I know this is well needed among our arts and cultural organizations. So I'm, totally supportive of this. But I would ask you, as the mayor is saying, the city needs to lobby the state, that this is a to-do also for you all to reach out to our state delegation, to reach out to the governor, and say that there should be priority given to the arts and the cultural organizations. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Ballantyne. That's a good point. And what we will do for everybody watching, we will provide you the information. We'll get that information out to you, but who has to be lobbied and what we're asking for. And it is a very explicit, simple ask to adopt a section of the CARES Act that will allow us to give that money out to our artists. And we're going to get this done. We're going to fight hard for it. So thank you for that point, councilors. So also we want to make sure we clarify the types of grants and that are available for our arts community. It's COVID grants for local cultural organizations, and those applications are due on the 28th of this month. Community support grants for BIPOC individuals and organizations, and they're due by mid-October, October 19th. And again, the new Arts Resiliency Fund eligible for investments in artists and businesses and the creation of new work and emergency funds, and more information can be coming on that soon. At this point, I do want to hand off to Greg Jenkins to talk a little bit about the local cultural council grants. Greg?
Sure. I mean, as many of you know, that each year the city issues, we have been doing grant programming, the local cultural council grant programs. So we get funding from the state, Massachusetts Cultural Council, and that that cycle has been delayed because of the state's own budget cycle being slightly delayed. We anticipate that being issued in November 15th instead of October 15th. And I think you all know over the past 3 years or so, through the mayor's support and his own advocacy, that we've been allocating some of our own OM money, just so that City Council understands that this money that comes in from the state, we don't necessarily have to match it, but we are one of the few communities across the Commonwealth that actually turns around and takes a little bit additional money to match this LCC grant process. We'll have more sort of details about that a little bit later, like in another month. But we do anticipate, being able to contribute an additional amount similar to what we've done before. We had discussed before about having it be, another 50,000. We're going to sort of explore that. We've got to look at all of our pots of money, but just to let you know that will be available. Typically, these grants are also for like residencies in schools, field trips, fellowship grants, very much project grants. A lot of the work that you see in the community over the years have been supported through these, this LCC grant process. I just wanted to give you a little clarification because typically in September we're rolling this out, but it is going to be delayed.
So that's a good spot to mention. If all of you were at the event when we did the awards during the winter before COVID came upon us, we had announced that we were going to seek and work with the council to increase the city's allocation, upwards of $100,000, and we're still committed to doing that. We never got to do that with the council because we had a lot of uncertainty when we had to present, and the council had to consider and debate the fiscal year 21 budget. And we'll see where we're at as we go to first on priority getting the $500,000 in free cash, a request to the council to go to the emergency funding, and then potentially adding more on the matching side as well. So that's still on our radar, and we just never got a chance to do it because there was so much uncertainty about where services would be, where state aid to cities and towns would be. Things are still a little murky, but clearer than they were, so more to come on that. So thank you, Greg. I don't know if you want to add anything else before I move on.
No, thanks.
Also, we want to make sure everyone's aware there's individual financial support that everyone should be tuned into. We strongly encourage everyone to visit somervillema.gov/coronavirus help. There are far more resources in this comprehensive guide than we can get into right now, but we want you to know there are resources here for you, and we're here for you to help guide you through them, and the staff will make themselves available. So before you assume nothing applies to you, please check out the website. Please reach out to us and let us make sure, let's be sure that there are opportunities for here to assist you as individuals as well. We also want to mention and talk a little bit about, highlight the long-term focus on some of our projects supporting the arts and our local creative economy. The first one is our work with Art Farm, and want to thank all of you who've participated over the long time period, years of envisioning, planning and designing, and design will be finalized this winter, like in many other capital projects. Across the city there was a delay because of construction halting and design process halting, but design will be finalized this winter. There'll be a funding request that will be submitted from the administration to the city council as soon as this spring. In construction, we expect to start in the spring of 2022, and the project will finish in the fall of 2023. Again, the timeline of the Art Farm is aligned with another project supporting that major utility work on Somerville Ave, the pump house. This is going to be an iconic project that really paid tribute to what's happening, to the history of Brick Bottom, the creativity of Somerville, our arts community, and really our civic vitality. And we look forward that we'll all be able to gather here. This project is definitely going to happen. I want to thank you all for that work. Also, we are focused not just on what we're going to build that's new, but preserving what is special and an important part of our local creative economy, such as our Vernon Street Studios and Joy Street Studios. Many are concerned about artists being displaced and losing those spaces. We are focused on those spots and preserving that and committed to do everything we need to do to preserve those spaces. And this falls into the other category, and we'll talk about the task force in a little bit. The general installation building, which is a building on East Cross Street in Somerville, is a building that is vacant that the city owns. We've made a commitment to dedicate that towards an art and creative use, such as artist housing, workspace, exhibition space, and something we're going to work with the arts community on. There was a joint request for information, RFI, that was submitted that includes, again, new arts community space, and as a main focus, there will be a community process as it relates to the findings of the RFI and then the RFP, which is a request for proposals to actually do a project will be released that reflects the findings of the community. So this is a project we want to put in the hands of the community and look forward to working with you on that. And then I just want to mention the Armory. City doesn't own the Armory, however, it is so recognized as a community asset. And much like Joyce Street and Vernon Street, those studios, we want to make sure the Armory will remain a performance space, a community space, a meeting space, a workspace for artists. It is an important, again, feature and asset in local creative culture. And we're working collectively with City Councilor Mark Niedergang and the entire City Council, Arts at the Armory and others to make sure that space is preserved also, and there'll be more to come on that. Supporting all these efforts is really what we're doing around zoning, which is the tool and the framework to approach facilitation of arts and creative uses. I'm going to hand this off to Greg for more explanation and elaboration. Greg?
Sorry about that. I had a connectivity problem. I think a lot of you all know that, the city has been doing quite a bit of work around the zoning and the arts. Ever since Mayor Curtatone came in, that we were doing a lot of work in Union Square. And he helped with the whole creative economy in Union Square around the 2005 era. And we were one of the first cities to do a creative arts overlay in Union Square through the zoning. And from that, we were able to get approximately 5 live-work units that are down at the Metro 9 complex that finally came on. It was very much, a critical type of zoning that we ended up doing and sort of clarifying a lot of arts and creative uses, which was really, really key and supportive both for the arts community, provided a lot of clarity to developers, to the planning board, and taking that all the way up to the new zoning. A lot of you all were involved with some of the public meetings and hearings that we've had over the years. Zoning is really key. Zoning sort of, either incentivizes or de-incentivizes how the community wants to see development and planning throughout Somerville. And the new zoning, which I give a lot of credit to, the city staff and the city council and a lot of people that came out over the meetings over the last 2 years, that within certain districts within Somerville, there will be sort of a 5% arts and creative use set aside, specifically in the mid-rise, commercial core, and fabrication districts. And through a lot of advocacy as well through the Boynton Yards and the overlay districts, almost up to 10% of the overall commercial space that will be set aside for the arts and creative uses. And out of this, we sort of recognize the need for, in a way, to develop a creative space task force to help us hone in on some individual policies that are kind of refined the way in which we as a city, both the planning and zoning departments, go down and through, get specificity from these new developments that are occurring in Boynton Yards. And I mean, I will say that, throughout the Commonwealth, I know that I've been at plenty of different conferences, and a lot of people have always been intrigued by sort of what we're doing through zoning and ways in which we can try to harness, redevelopment to support the arts community. So I just want to let you all know, I know a number of people have attended tons of meetings on this, and I do want to just sort of express, your thanks over the course of, almost 15 years, sort of being able to come out to the, to these community meetings, working with the planning department, working with the council to sort of hone in on this. But it really, really is important. We've got, some new units coming up with Powder House development that's coming up, and we'll talk a little bit about that in a few seconds. But these are sort of key things that in a way are really pretty specific around arts and zoning and arts and, community planning. So we're fortunate, and I'm looking forward to continue to work with the community on this.
Thanks, Greg. Next, I'm going to ask Kristen Still just to get a little bit into the Creative Space Task Force that will be established and work with the Metropolitan Area Planning Council. Kristen.
Yes, thank you. So, and again, I'm the Summer Stat Director, and I am working with Greg on some of these longer term issues. My sister is a glass and neon artist, and have had many conversations with her about her struggles around finding a place that's reliable and affordable to make her art. So this is an issue that I really appreciate, and I'm just really honored to be able to work with Greg on this project, where we're collaborating with the Metropolitan Area Planning Council to create a creative space task force. And this group is really going to have the mission of answering the question, how do we preserve our existing creative spaces, and how do we preserve our existing creative spaces, and how do we create new spaces? And so this will be a group of staff, area experts, an elected official, but really importantly, many artists and residents from the community who can help us grapple with these questions and really dig in and think, what are the challenges that our creative spaces are facing? Pre-COVID, there were already challenges. There's even more challenges now. How can we most effectively support the organizations as a municipality? As Greg was talking about, the zoning is unlocking a lot of opportunity. How can we best harness this? So the task force with MAPC, our first output is going to be a report and a plan. That's really the first step. And so the task force will help us move forward to implement that plan so that we can really make sure that we're preserving some of these real treasures that the mayor was talking about, like Vernon Street and Mad Oyster and the Armory, and also think through what spaces do we need to meet the great need for workspaces, for rehearsal spaces and performance spaces, really looking forward to seeing the outputs of this. So please stay tuned. And so I'll hand it back to Greg to speak about artist housing, because that's also an important piece of the zoning.
Right. I think a lot of you know, several years ago at the building down on Somerville Ave, there was a situation where, sort of artist housing or artist loft space was kind of the trend about 8 years ago. And, luckily through, the council, through the planning board, there was an obvious, reason to clarify, to derive clarification on, what are artists and what are artists and creative uses. And from that, the city created a certification program. So now there's no longer, any sort of muddling about, if a developer says they're going to build something for the arts community, that we have a certification process. And the certification process is really, stood us well in the sense that when, 5 units out of 100 are down at the Metro 9 building and outside of Boynton Yards, or, came online about 5 years ago, we were able to quickly, be able to work with the housing division and to certify artists and to basically, ensure that artists were going into those units. We have another round of artist certification in terms of working with the artist community, the housing department. We're going to start doing these certifications twice a year, and create kind of basically a roster of, of artists that are available to be able to go into units. There are 8 new units at the Powder House development. Our own certification is on the 18th. You should just find out more about this certification. We do have 3 inclusionary units. And I think there's a total of 8 inclusionary units down there. So for all of you interested in, what's going on at the Powder House, this is another example of, trying to ensure that, certain units are deeded, and they're deeded to the arts community, they're deeded to artists. There's clarification in that process. there's clarification on all sides. And so I think it's a positive thing. There is more information on our website, and there's a link there.
Thanks, Greg. This time I'm gonna hand off to Yaritza Menyavar to talk about what we're doing regarding arts during COVID. Yaritza?
Hi. Okay, so well, in support to the Somerville community and artists during COVID-19, the Arts Council, we asked ourselves how to continue to bring the community together, and most importantly, how to get immediate financial support to Somerville artists. And as a start, we continue to implement additional public art projects. In June was the completion of the tree project by artist Fermin Castro at Marshall Street Playground, which you can see in the picture in the slide. In July, we also held an outdoor art exhibit called Chance for Change, and also the Poetry on the Bike Path. Additionally, we collaborated with Cambridge Health Alliance and completed a mural, Care to the People, by artist Amanda Hill, that's located at the Somerville Hospital. And that was kind of like a way to begin, but we also did a lot of virtual programming and have been doing. Without being able to execute in-person festivals, that's the route we decided to take. We built on our programming and continued our usual annual events online with a few pop-ups around the city. For example, Art Beat transformed into a week-long event full of activities, which supported all disciplines of arts, music venues, and brought art back to the community. So a little light in like the darkness of COVID. In April, we launched our Home Alone Art Series, a series of virtual performances and presentations where we hired artists to live stream from the safety of their homes and studios. And since then, we have collaborated with over 30 artists and have provided monetary support of $9,300. We also continued several of our arts union events like the Big Gay Dance Party in collaboration with Health and Human Services. And just this weekend, we had a very successful What the Fluff Festival collaboration with Union Square Main Streets. And with our Nibble Kitchen program, we have been able to continuously support 5 immigrant entrepreneurs from Mexico, Brazil, Venezuela, Bolivia, and Bangladesh. The kitchen located at Bow Market has continued to incorporate Somerville's culinary traditions for the past 5 months since the reopening. And just to plug it in really quick, come by and support Nibble Kitchen. You can find the schedule on the website and social media. We're open Wednesdays through Sundays. And in thinking of our future projects, we're in the middle of planning for multiple public art exhibits and pieces, including a mural by Alexander Quito that will be outside of Gauchao Brazilian Cuisine in East Somerville, a photo exhibit featuring all BIPOC photographers, a projection project in Union Square. And for virtual programming, we have a number of projects, and just to name a few, the Evolution of Hip Hop is returning, the Honk Festival, Ignite, and we're going to continue our Home Alone Art Series by partnering up with organizations and more artists. So please contact to collaborate and participate. Thank you.
Thank you, Yaritza. So at this time, we want to hear your ideas, and we'll just go right into ideas and last part questions. And let me just highlight the parameters of this. We'll be having a moderated discussion. So I'd ask anyone participating, those who participate, to submit your names and general topic of your question on the chat function, and we'll call on you. So please wait until you're called on to unmute yourself, so we make the best use of our time. Stephanie Sherp, the Director of Arts of the Armory, will be helping us moderate the discussion by sifting through the chat to pick out speaking order that's representative of a variety of issues. We're not repeating ourselves. So if we could all follow those rules, we'll get a lot done tonight, and we'll get to a lot of questions. But I do want to recognize the first speaker. I'll be doing that. Will be Lynn Gervins on the subject of COVID relief funding. Lynn?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I'm the director at Mudflat Pottery School in East Somerville, and I've been working with many of the other arts organizations in the city and individual artists to try to understand how we can get some support from the city to help all of us stay in business and continue to be artists. I'm really encouraged by the news that you shared tonight about the additional $500,000. and perhaps more through CARES funding. But I guess a couple of questions I have are around what that timing will be for that money, and what the process is. I know you guys have a lot to figure out, but I do feel like we have a real crisis here in terms of being able to stay in business. We have some smaller organizations in Somerville that are on the brink of closing, and others of us who are looking ahead to how much longer this crisis will continue, and where we will, how we will survive this and be able to continue to provide arts and cultural services to all the residents of Somerville.
So thanks, Lynn. It's good to see you even virtually.
You too.
And I remember when, it seems ages ago, we did Mud Flat, about 20 years ago.
That was 10 years ago, yeah.
Well, more.
Yeah.
But anyway, so yeah, let me start the answer by saying we want to get this money. We'll get the money to the city council sometime over the next 30 days, 45 days at the most, for the consideration approval. In the meantime, we will start sometime before now and then the process of getting requests for assistance going. We don't have to wait for that. So, and we'll be releasing that soon. Greg can talk about that. Kristen talk about what we're thinking to be a pretty straightforward process. So even before the funding's approved in the council, which I expect really good support on, not to be presumptuous, we will start that process. We know the need is deep, and why. We know that it's immediate, and we want to get that to you. And yeah, $500,000 is good. We expect to use it all, get it out. We want to get it all out, and we want the other $500,000 from CARES funding. And we're really frustrated that that hasn't been. It's frustrating because we have the money at our disposal. We want to get it to you. We need the Commonwealth to enact or accept or adopt the section that Boston has, and we'll get that out as well as the other 120,000. I don't know if Greg or Kristen want to comment further on that.
I mean, I can say that our, COVID grant is out there, and one of the things that we struggled with in terms of communicating with you all in the last couple of weeks is finding this balance of having, we wanted to have a long enough period so you can get the application in, but we don't want to have it too long because we know as a city it will take us a little while to process. But the application is out there. I think internally we're having this discussion about ways in which that additional money can be placed into that bucket of an application process. So hopefully that we can get this moving. We just had discussions with the finance director today and purchasing. I think there's going to be ways in which we can streamline, the contractual part of this to get the money out more quickly. But do notice the deadlines. I don't need to necessarily repeat it, but we can make sure that I'll put the links up on the chat to our 2 grant programs that were in the title, but the deadlines are there. There's a tight deadline, the 2.5 weeks or 2 weeks for the COVID grant and approximately 5 weeks for the BIPOC grant. And what we hope we'll have another category 2 that's a little bit broader, as the mayor mentioned.
Yeah, we will not take months on this, or even much time, or we're not talking several weeks. We want to move quick, get that out to you so you can get going and making your requests. So a follow-up, by the way, Stephanie is, just a correction, Stephanie is moderating and sending questions, sending speakers to be recognized, or attendees to be recognized my way. And the next person she highlighted, be a follow-up question, I guess, regarding funds just announced, would be from Ava Rosenberg. Ava, welcome. How are you?
Hello, thank you, Mayor, and thank you, City Councilors. Just tremendous news, and curious to hear more about where that $500,000 is coming from, if you can share. And then I think you shared that you'll be sending out details so we can support your advocacy at the state level, and want to make sure we know how to support the pushes you're making about how to allocate CARES funding.
Sure, not to bore you with municipal finance because it would be less exciting than an insurance seminar. The money comes from a source called free cash, and it's a terrible term. Let's just say it's called free cash. And basically, at the end of the fiscal year, depending on how we manage our money, our allocated budget, we're left with a certain amount of surpluses, and that's not even a good term. So it's called free cash. It gets certified by the state, And then what we do with free cash is typically build up our stabilization funds, rainy day funds over the year. I'll give an example. When we took office in 2004, I think we had $400,000 in stabilization funds and rainy day funds. I think today we have about 50 million. And that money goes to pay off, and prepare for unforeseen circumstances. Let's just use the mega blizzards of 2015. We had to pay $13 million to actually move all the snow from the city. We had enough monies built up and so forth to stabilize debt service, to make investment in other parks projects. So we'll take a piece of that money here out of there, and it requires city council approval, and that's where the money's coming from. I didn't mean to be long-winded about it. I can send you some links on free cash. I've been doing this now 25 years. I'm still bored by the topic. I got to be honest with you. So I know Councilor Ballantyne and Member feel the same way. So, I don't know, Katiana, did you want to add anything to that? Okay, yes. So the next speaker, and thank you, Ava, for that question, from Gloria Mindock on rent relief and tax abatement for landlords of arts and cultural facilities. Gloria, welcome. Thank you for your question.
Hi, thank you, Mayor Curtatone, and hello to everyone and the city councilors. What are you doing to help enact a property tax abatement for landlords and owners who lease to nonprofit artists and arts and cultural organizations, providing the landlord agrees to pass on the savings to the nonprofit artists and arts organizations? Many people are losing their spaces due to high rent or not being able to pay rent. And I would like to ask if you would do a task force comprised of city officials and arts community leaders to investigate the feasibility of this request by September 21st. And so what are your thoughts? Has this come into any discussions?
Thanks, Gloria. Actually, it has, and in the context, the general context of preserving housing affordability and neighborhoods, going back several years, the council, remember, we formed a task force to look at different opportunities, legislative, regulatory innovation, or changes that can be made locally or at the request of the state to do several things. One of them is what we'll call, and what we call back then, we'll use tonight, called the benevolent landlord, sort of, rewarding the landlord who passes the savings on, or even just charges less rent to preserve, give summable families, or in this case, you would use artists. That would require changes from the state. We can't do that unilaterally. I think the best thing for us to do is to share the work of that task force, because it is relevant here. The work of that task force did result in about a dozen different things that the council's already taking up, from the creation of a land trust to, looking at other opportunities such as rent control here in the city, as well as other legislation. But we did take a hard look at this. If it was something we could unilaterally do here, it's not that we shouldn't try again. We would flip that switch in a heartbeat. But I think what we should do is we can maybe put a link up. If we can't do it tonight, we'll get that out to you all. And I am more than happy to think about creating a task force. It might be the task force that was spoken about by Kristen. That might be the best, group to take this conversation on. I don't know, Kristen, would that be relevant there?
Yes, so the task force will be looking at multiple ways of trying to support our existing arts and culture organizations to stay where they are, as well as artist collectives, like our various studio buildings. Daniel Kopp, who's our partner at MAPC, just joined. So just MAPC is really committed to working with us on this. He's taking time from his evening to listen into this conversation. So I think there'll be some really good conversation there. And we're going to really try to think as broadly and creatively as we can.
Also, so Gloria and others, the Sustainable Neighborhoods Working Group, I'm going to try to put that link to the report and all up in the chat before night, so we're working on that right now, but we'd encourage everyone who wants to inquire about participating on that task force.
Okay.
Thank you for that question. Next, Stephanie Sherp has a question on relaxing or point
Mr.
on
Mayor?
relaxing permitting. Stephanie, how are you?
Excuse me, Mr. Mayor, Counselor Ballantyne, could
Go
I
ahead,
make a,
Counselor.
hi, could I just make a comment on Gloria's question? So
Yep.
I just want to say is that was discussed at the last city council meeting and so, excuse me, finance meeting. So I put an order in specifically to have the director of assessing and the director of finance talk to us. But as was explained to us during the finance meeting, it's very complex and it's very, very layered, and it's not a quick fix. But the council is very happy to start digging into it to figure out a potential process if that's possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Council Ballantyne. And again, thank you again, Gloria. Stephanie Sherp on relaxing permitting. Stephanie, how are you?
Yes, fine. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you to the city councilors for organizing and providing us with this platform to speak with you tonight. Also, great news about the $500,000 announcement. Thank you for that commitment. Tonight, I wanted to challenge the city to form a task force comprised of city officials and arts community leaders to investigate the feasibility of temporarily relaxing certain permitting and licensing rules so that arts organizations can use our outdoor spaces to recapture some of our lost income. The city made accommodations to support restaurants' expansion of their outdoor operations. Similar assistance is needed for the arts and cultural sector. So at Arts at the Armory, we lost an opportunity this summer by not being able to do arts programming outside, similar to farmers markets and restaurants. At Arts at the Armory, if I had not faced so many zoning restrictions, I could have developed something similar to what was created as an outdoor arts and multi-use space at Starlight Square and Central Square, serving Somerville and beyond. We could have done solo act live arts programming in our outdoor seating area at the Armory, but we were denied an entertainment license. As the ED of Arts at the Armory, I felt our only viable plan for survival was to reopen our cafe and add grocery and beer and wine sales. Meanwhile, with the help of the Economic Development Office, the arts community could have been working with restaurants on collaborative programming that would have boosted revenue for both sectors. Looking ahead, we need you in the city of Somerville to prioritize arts and cultural organizations in permitting and reopening plans. How will you plan to do this? We have proposed the formation of a task force by September 21st to work on these issues.
Thanks, Stephanie. In short, yes, we're very happy to work on examining those issues to see if we can provide regulatory permitting relief. And whether that's a separate task force or the Creative Space Task Force, either one, we're happy to work with you to move on that. And we agree, we need to find ways where we either can get direct resources and revenues to our arts community as we would with small businesses, and at the same time, look to loosen any regulatory or hurdles that have a cost impact or inhibit the ability to expand your ability to operate and maintain your operations or grow it. So we're all on board in examining that, so we could follow up with you. And whether that's the Creative Space Task Force or a separate one, we're happy to move on that and move on it quickly. I don't know if councilors, would you like to comment on that? Either one of you?
Sure, Mr. Mayor. So I support this wholeheartedly because I think that, you know, as I said before, I'm sorry, I lost the screen here, but I hope you can hear me. So okay, great. I'll fiddle around with the buttons afterwards. I support that. I think for me, the question is, so I will write an order, put it in, you know, give pressure certainly on the city council side, as I'm sure my colleague, Councilor Mba will. I'm a little unclear, and I'm not sure if anybody from your staff is here that could talk about this, is what is it specifically that we can speed up for them? And what timeline would the city have to work in versus what timeline does the arts and cultural organizations need to work in? Because I'm sure they want to be open tomorrow. And so I think it would be helpful for the discussion if anybody could add a little bit more process clarification to that.
Yeah, I think you bring up a good point. And in some cases, it's more general, and we'd love to hear what those, like we did with the other sectors of our economy and business community, what some of those hurdles or challenges were that we work to address versus what is specific. Some of them are specific. For example, the Arts of the Armory, they're specific to a particular condition, which I admit absolutely onerous on their permit to operate. And I think other members of the council, myself, have been strongly supportive moving to change that for Arts at the Armory. But in general, it'd be, I think, more, it'd be a good opportunity to engage with everyone to understand fully where are the areas we should be looking at.
Mr. Mayor.
Go ahead, Will. Yeah, Councilman.
Yeah, not just to echo, like the sentiment of Councilor Ballantyne. First, I wholeheartedly support this approach because, why we are here, because we owe a duty of care to the arts community. And I realized that we had given, just at the last finance meeting, I asked a question I thought maybe, I was really happy to hear that the restaurants don't pay for the parking spots. That was extended to them, because I was like, there's no way that they should be paying even more after they've been through all this process. But I think one thing also that I'm thinking about right now along those lines of what Stephanie mentioned is that we need like a really rapid assessment of where things are with all these arts communities, so we can know like what action we can be taking immediately. Like, it's not like, maybe in the next month or so, maybe the Arts of the Armory or Lynn's shop, like, so people, like, we just need to understand like where they are and start helping them immediately before now we now create this task force where we don't know, when we will actually like evolve from that task force to actionable, steps that will be taken.
Yeah, it sounds to me that the Creative Space Task Force is a side more, it'll have the opportunity to be more methodical, thinking long-term, and this is something where we gather together to think of these immediate issues that can be plucked off right off the bat.
Well, so, Mr. Mayor, and to everyone who's present, so my thought is, or I'm trying to understand is, are you all talking to one another? And is there a list together that says, this cultural organization would be great with this restaurant, let's come together? Has somebody already framed that out? Because sometimes it's certainly easier for us, because I don't know the size of all your organizations. If you, sort of present the first step of the work and say, here, this is what we want to do now, this will impact us now, and then the analysis can be done, and maybe some of those ideas can be reacted to immediately. Unfortunately, I'm sorry, I don't understand the details on the Armory, but maybe then there could be, a different focus on dealing with issues of a building like the Armory or like Mud Flats, where some of the organizations own their own buildings versus smaller ones who could maybe collaborate or work with restaurants or other larger nonprofits.
Stephanie, remind me, because there was a communication sent from different from organizations that have come together. There were some, I thought there were a few spelled out there, but not a complete list, obviously.
Sorry, what is your question exactly?
On the communication that was sent to myself and the council, I thought some opportunities were identified there, but not obviously a complete exhaustive list, but.
For the parking lot?
Yeah, I mean,
So,
that's on yours.
Via our zoning, the only thing that we are allowed to do in the parking lot is a farmer's market.
So, I understand. So that's for the Armory. So I think what we need to do is really gather together with a group, form the task force. I'm sure in the conversations you've had with others that there is a litany of opportunities or ideas about where the city can intervene. Obviously, the Armory, I think I can summarize though probably on my hand what has to be done there, because I understand that intimately well. But in general, for the arts community to hear any other ideas are out there. So we can move, I submit, we follow up, we move the formal working group with the city, members of the Community Arts Council, the City Council, because we're going to need undoubtedly some legislative relief, and that we're all speaking at the same time, real time, and we're moving together on it. So I'd submit the next step is we'll have Greg, let's follow up with Stephanie and those who sent that communication and work from there. We can start that tomorrow, honestly. All right, so Stephanie, did you have anything else or?
No, thank you for addressing that question. And I think we have some other questions in the queue. You're good?
Yeah, I got the next one you sent me. So Susan Bursla, hi Susan, on these regarding art spaces and the need for a cultural plan. Hi Susan, how are you? Did we unmute Susan?
That worked. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is pretty exciting, I have to say. I mean, it's kind of funny, but there's more people at this meeting, I think, because we're all doing it from our living room than if we had it in one of the spaces around town. I'm really, I want to thank you and your staff, especially Greg, who's been talking to us since, I think, April about these problems. I'm really heartened by Councillor Valentine and Councillor Mamba's support on this issue. I'm just really afraid of the timing. Part of that is because I was on the task force for Art Farm, which started I don't know how long ago. And just to use that as a case example, you know, COVID's going to be around going forward for a while. And the plan behind that was an open air community arts and agriculture and cultural space. And the one building we were looking at had like a wall that would come up to let fresh air in. And it seems to me like that's kind of the perfect solution to a community under threat of COVID. And instead, I loved hearing you have a plan for it. And I loved hearing numbers and dates and stuff, but I was really disheartened by it being 2022 in 2023. So one of the questions that's been going on in the chat from a number of different people is whether the Art Farm site can't just be used for outdoor gatherings once we have outdoor gatherings in the city before you start building anything, because this is going to be a problem in the spring. It's going to be a problem next summer. The way the community, the business community, I guess, mostly got together in Cambridge to put together the Starlight stage is kind of amazing that they did it so quickly. And I know it's really hard for cities to move that quickly for a lot of reasons. Like, we don't want you running off and doing stuff that we don't all know about, right? So that slows down the whole process. But at the same time, it's a pandemic, it's a crisis. You know, a lot of people are suffering, a lot of businesses are closing, a lot of artists are really, and arts organizations are really under threat. So I would just sort of push you a little bit to rethink the Art Farm, whether that could at least be made into like an open space for the creative community to work with in whatever year we're going into, 2021. Thank you. And the other thing that we wanted to really just bring up is the fact that other cities have successfully worked with creating a arts and cultural plan, and that maybe that's something that should be considered when the task force gets put together as well.
Yeah, thanks, Susan, for both points. We'll look at the space piece more deeply. On the cultural plan, you know, we couldn't agree more. Carrying off, and I'll let either Greg or Kristen talk about where we built, you know, in terms of summer vision and how we speak to the creative economy, the arts, launching from there. We've had conversations internally about a master cultural plan for the city and what the next steps should be. So Greg or Kristen, do you want to comment on that?
I'm looking at the chat, and there's a couple of items that maybe I want to clarify. The Creative Space Task Force that Kristen has talked about, and I heard Daniel's here, it is going to be intentionally small. There are a number of people saying that they would like to be involved. The point of the task force is hopefully to have a working group of people that are both staff from the planning department, several people within the community. Callie Chapman is going to be on it, sort of representing dance. Risa Blattman had mentioned hopefully serving. There's a number of artists that are going to be on there, but there's also going to be, a banker from Witterhill Bank. Hopefully we'll have roughly around 10 to 11 people. What I'm getting at is that the task force is not necessarily going to be 80 people. But what we hope is that the first work is going to be doing a survey. And I know we've done a lot of surveys in the past, but I think the data is really key and helpful. A survey to get back out to the community and understand very much more specifically about, spaces and productions of spaces and the needs and the demands of all of that. And at the same time, for that group to hone in very specifically on the new zoning. The Creative Space Task Force is very, very different than I think if we as a community, and we have discussed this, and the mayor, just mentioned about Summer Vision. If we wish to create a specific, cultural plan, like a lot of different, cities do. Arlington just got through doing one. Boston's done one. So I think a cultural plan will even help us more with these larger long-term issues around funding, zoning, space, new opportunities, and potentially, baking them in more into the Summer Vision type of plan. So I just wanted to create some clarification around what that task force is, trying to do and what it's not going to do. There was also a ton of information about issues with the chat. One of the things that we've discussed, the ResiStat group, we've talked about this, and I think the mayor was even going to bring this up, but we should go ahead and bring this up, that what we hope to do is have more specific Zoom meetings to reconvene you all around specific topics to bring this back to the city very quickly. I know that we've had discussions about this. I know at times it doesn't feel like things are happening. I do know, unlike to a certain extent, the restaurant and business group, that each individual artist space is so very specific with what its needs are, where the building is in location to the city, if there are underlying zoning issues, or sadly for the Armory, there's, I think, 37 special conditions that were placed on the Armory when it first opened years ago. So very specific. Mudflat's needs and specificity is very different than, so to speak, than even the Armory. So those are kind of three things that I think that we really can move quickly on. And I really do want to reiterate to the, as the mayor has mentioned, that we really do want to get this money out to people as quickly as possible. And I would say, you really should apply if your needs are above and beyond that 24,000. Obviously, we set that mark before we understood if we had free cash available. I would say put your request in there as it relates to your needs and what some of your concerns are for your buildings. And then, from that too, we'll understand more about these needs.
Thanks, Greg. So Emily Ruddick from Mass Creative wanted to make a point. Emily, welcome. Emily, you're still on the line?
Sorry, yes, I'm still on the call. Sorry about that. I tried to unmute myself before I was allowed. First of all, Mayor Curtatone and the staff of the city of Somerville, I so appreciate, and we so appreciate you taking time to talk about this issue, and your comments about how vital arts and culture are to the vibrancy and the connectedness of Somerville really strike a chord, because we all know that, and it's good to know that you understand that. So I think one of the things that I'm so excited personally, and I know as a community, we're really excited and thankful for the things that you're talking about right now. And I think a really important part of this, and one of the things that we know happens, is that having a direct line to you and to your leadership staff, as well as having a direct line to Greg and the Somerville Arts Council, helps move things forward so that we can tell you directly how these are affecting us, and where we can provide actual creative solutions for you and for the community. So we would like to ask, I'd like to ask if we can set a deadline of October 1st to publish at least 2 more arts and cultural town hall meetings for the 2021 calendar year. Sounds like Greg is already talking about a number of breakout groups, but it would be great to just have these on the calendar as check-in points for us and you.
Absolutely. That's easy to do. We like seeing people. It gets lonely up here since COVID, so we appreciate it. No, we will definitely do that, and thank you. We appreciate the fact that you pressed us on this. It's very helpful. Thank you, Emily. And the next question or comment will come from Callie Chapman. Callie, how are you?
Oh, hi. Hi, Mayor. And I had a question regarding the tax abatement question that was raised earlier. And I wonder if there's anything that would garner more support towards state level approval that is necessary if we communicated with other municipalities that are interested in similar tax abatement activities.
Yeah, I absolutely. I think, whether we're talking about tax abatement or relief for benevolent landlords or those who are supporting affordable housing or artists or, local option of rent control or all these things, it's better as we do it as a region. And here in the inner core, especially, we brag about some of our second per capita to New York City, only to New York City for the number of artists in the community. But that creative vibrancy is everywhere in the inner core communities. And the more we can align that advocacy and that activism, I think the first one I would say is on the COVID relief money. And that's a pretty direct and easy one. So my next task is to make sure I get that out to you. Everyone advocating to the governor's office or where we tell you to do on the message of accepting that section of Care Funds money for the Care Funds Act, and that would allows us to disperse money to artists. But that type of collective action has a big impact, much more than, I would say, just one city filing a home rule petition. And we see that working now on a variety of fronts. So, yes.
Yes, okay, great, thank you.
Okay, thanks, Callie. David Scott has a question. David, welcome.
All right, am I unmuted?
You are unmuted, David. Welcome.
Great. Hi, Mayor Curtatone. I'm a new member of the Union Square Neighborhood Council, and I'm trying to get a handle on how the civic space throughout the Union Square developments like US2 and DLJ is being coordinated. I'm wondering if part of that space is earmarked for the arts, and I'm wondering if there's leadership from the city or if each developer is just doing whatever they want.
Each developer is not doing just what they want. As you probably figured out by being on the council, you have a big say in the advocacy and directing how that's done. I don't think is anyone from planning on this call. Am I correct, Kristen? Can talk about the specifics around that for you. If
That's
not, David,
correct.
I'll make sure they follow up with you and everyone on that.
Yeah, we would be happy to have someone from the planning department follow up. They're not on the
David,
call.
can you, I thought you also typed this in the chat function, didn't you?
Yeah.
Okay, you might have captured, we'll get back to you on that. We'll give you the specifics on that. But thank you for serving on the neighborhood council. Welcome to the city. We appreciate you being part of it.
Mayor, I could mention a little bit about the Boynton Yards, which is
go ahead.
to David. I mean, within Boynton Yards, and I think the city council here could also comment as well. There's the one building that's going up right now. You can see the steel going up on that. We are supposed to get 5% of all square footage of that building is supposed to have a set aside for the arts and creative uses. So if you go into the city zoning, you'll see sort of a laundry list with that. I mean, I have been, reaching out to John Fenton, who's the developer down in Boynton Yards. There's 2 other buildings that ultimately 10% of all the commercial space will have a set aside. The rationale behind this creative space task force is in a way around for the arts. And now open space is one thing. I don't want to speak about that, or for a lot of the other benefits that, you know, that the community pushed for. But that, to me, that 5 or 10% set aside, it's in the MOU that was laid out. It's in, you know, that the planning department, the community advocated for. The detail of that, and meaning, you know, which groups may go in, how much is that going to cost, what's the duration, does it make sense to, if that space should be there, or should there be a buyback provision similar to like other buyback provisions in sort of master development. All of that, those types of specificity is exactly what this creative space task force is going to be looking at as it relates to zoning. To communicate about how they're looking at, you know, I know the last time I saw they're planning for a smaller park, open space there for a plaza, all that type of stuff. I really do think it's available through the city, or if you look at the planning process, I think, you know, Sarah White, who's your city planner, chief of planning, would be able to help you with that.
And can I just add one comment?
Go ahead, Councilor.
Yeah, so David, I think also one thing you need to also understand is that like most development that are happening now in the city, you know, are community led. So there's the community benefit agreement that is being structured in different neighborhoods as far as development is evolving. So that has, you know, an impact to play in terms of what civic space are being created.
Thank you, Councilor. And we'll follow up with you on that, David. So I'm going to call on Sam Epstein and ask any other questions or comments people have after, while Sam is asking his, if you can put them out there, and we'll call on you, and we'll go over, you know, once we're done, we'll go over next steps from here. So Sam, welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thanks for calling on me. So my suggestion is for Somerville to lift its ban on musicians performing at restaurants with outdoor patios. Really just lift the complete ban that Somerville has on all music at patios. There's only a couple of weeks left now for musicians to work outside safely before it's too cold and too late, and restaurants like mine, the Jungle Community Music Club, will have to shut down. I know that Somerville has a commitment to artists and musicians because, for instance, I've been joining a lot of calls representing my business as a restaurant, as a venue, and as a business, going the business route. I've actually never had the opportunity to be unmuted, to have access to decision makers. I've never been able to make this case. So I really appreciate the value that Somerville's putting on artists, holding this with all decision makers. Really do appreciate that. And of course, Somerville has given one of the COVID grants to the Jungle to keep it open, keep musicians at least being able to live stream from inside while we have customers outside on the patio. But I think it's important that right now we do decriminalize outdoor music in Somerville, because it's been happening at restaurants safely in Cambridge. And the message that it sends, when I have musicians who work at the Jungle are disproportionately Black. And so when I have a Black musician who gets on stage and I have to explain that they have to live stream to their friends on their phones outside in Somerville because we have a ban on outdoor music, while it's happening in Cambridge, and Somerville has allowed indoor gyms, indoor exercise classes, indoor hockey, it looks like structural racism. And I believe it was not the intent, because I know the value. I know that Somerville knows that there's a lot of people of all races, of all backgrounds who are musicians, and has really put a lot of value on musicians. And I trust that this really was just an oversight, that there haven't been a lot of venues getting access, getting the ability to make this case. And I hope that as the decision makers who are on this call, we'll be able to, for the next couple weeks, we'll be able to lift this ban, and we'll be able to let people perform, have one chance the next couple weeks to perform before it's too cold.
Sam, thank you very much for bringing that to our attention. I promise we will follow up on this narrow issue, on this very particular issue ASAP. I'll get a better understanding of it with the team. And I know we're going to tackle a lot of immediate issues, but it seems this is the most time sensitive one, or one of the few. So I've already signaled to my staff to follow up with you and others, maybe on a particular call on this issue. If you can, when we follow up with you, that Tom Galligani, we'll probably have him gather everyone for a call who are dealing with this particular issue. We'll try to understand and address it as soon as possible.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
I appreciate that. Thanks again, Sam. Robert Smith, welcome.
I had to unmute myself. I just wanted to say that as well, I'm on the board of the Arts Armory, and I'm actually the president of the board. And I want to say that I am just really, really excited by the fact that this meeting is something that I think the arts community in the city has needed to have for a long, long time. A friend of mine said at one point early on in the COVID thing, is this a breakdown or a breakthrough? And it was a breakdown, but now we have the opportunity to make it a breakthrough by continuing this conversation and really taking this opportunity to build this collaboration between the city and the arts community and the council, and really establishing ways to continue the conversation for years and years to come, so that arts are always vital in the city. That's what I gotta say.
Thanks, Robert. Appreciate it. And we appreciate everyone engaging and working with us. Thank you. So I don't believe we have any other more questions, at least for right now. We have a lot of questions that have to be answered. So let me try to summarize as best I can and believe what I missed. Staff has got. So we are definitely going to be publishing by October 1st, the next two, at least another 2 meeting dates. We'll get working on that. We know we need to work. We have the long-term creative space task force. That'll happen, but an immediate working group on dealing with permitting and regulatory issues, as Stephanie alluded to. Sam, we're going to follow up with you ASAP on that particular issue, as it's more time sensitive. We are going to be getting more information out about the $500,000 and other funding opportunities and how to apply for that, including a timeline. We'll get out when we're going to be submitting that exactly to the City Council for consideration. We'll be following up with you about what the ask and advocacy should be for the adoption of a particular section of CARES money, so that we can get an additional $500,000 out to our artist community. And I think overall, on a broad level, that's it. And we have a lot of conversations to do about long-term needs, cultural plan, issues around, tax abatements for benevolent landlords and so forth. They're going to be captioned in certain groups. But you can yell at me through the screen if I missed anything right now. I just took some notes, and the staff captured us as well. We did put a link up to the Sustainable Neighborhoods Working Group that deal with the whole affordable housing and livability and sustainability issues in terms of staying in Somerville and it being affordable, and some of the actions that were recommended, and you can measure that up against what we've taken in the community. But I think that's where we are right now. Stephanie, from your end, did we miss anything in my summary?
I've been just ferociously trying to keep up with the conversation in the chat. I don't think so. I'm going to have to listen to this meeting again. One thing that I don't know if we discussed was the idea of a cultural plan. Was that brought up? Okay. And potentially engaging a consultant for that. I think there's so many issues out there, and so many of them have bubbled to the surface tonight. And I know that I think something that would help all of us is really having a plan, being able to hold ourselves and hold city government accountable for that plan, and to really understand like what the commitments are and what the direction is that we're all working together towards. So that's something that I think is important. I think we've done a good job tonight of really separating like immediate term critical needs. I know my organization is in dire straits right now and needs immediate support, but then there are shorter term and longer term issues that really need to be addressed in the arts and cultural ecosystem in the city of Somerville. So I thank you so much for really listening to us tonight for this format, and we're here to work with you. That's why we suggested the idea of task force, so we can really dive into these issues and work side by side. And we want to see it happen, and we are committed to making it happen. So thank you. And if there's anything else, if anybody else, if we have about 10 more minutes, if there's anything that anybody else wants to say or speak, feel free just to let us know via the chat, and we can make that happen.
So I'm going to ask Councilor Ballantyne, Councilor Mba, if you want to make a couple of closing comments before I end it with some comments.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to thank everyone that's been here. I've taken a lot of notes, so many pages, you know, you can see, and I learned so much. Especially, I never even knew that, you know, there was a ban on outdoor performance. I just learned that tonight. I'm like, whoa, you know, and the mayor too is right on top of it. I just want to say, you know, I have accomplished what I wanted to come to listen, and you know, and the mayor is there, my colleague, Councilor Ballantyne, you know, we'll do everything within our power to make sure that, you know, you stay vibrant. So thank you for being, you know, here tonight for articulating your concerns.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Ballantyne?
Thank you. I think the summary, the list that you have, I've got the notes down here too. I'm looking forward to working with all of you and really rolling up my sleeves and helping. So certainly consider me someone you can bounce ideas on, and happy to work with the mayor and my colleagues to, you know, move things forward, especially the immediate concerns. I just want to say the comment about the cultural master plan. I was like thinking to myself, all the plans that we do in the city, it's like, yes, of course. And we don't have one. So I'm really happy that this was reiterated a few times, because I do think it's very important, because your organizations are such a strong marketing arm for our city. People want to come here. People look forward to the festivals, to the arts. So again, thank you. And I look forward to working with you, you know, starting tomorrow.
Yeah, thanks. Stephanie, the only thing we didn't talk was about the consultant, but that's about whatever we need to do to support that work, we're going to invest to do. So that's easy. So I just want to end by saying thank you. You know, it's amazing the impact. We don't have to recite it all here. The arts, the creative community has had on Somerville, as we've all spoken to. I think we take it for granted. You know, we have all these great events and things that happen. Realize there are actually people who make a livelihood on that, who contribute so much of themselves to it. So I apologize for that, because we really appreciate all of you and all of those who have been here in the past to really put Somerville on the map. And you have nothing but allies on this call and others on the council. And I would just say this, all the great things we brag about, some of that happens as a result of all of you and then those other artists and creators here in Somerville. It came because you did it. All we asked you to do is give us something that is truly abnormal, that no one's ever done before along the way, and we'll do it. And it really expresses our values and what's unique about Somerville and what we love, and we'll support it. And I promise you that'll be the case here. Although we all also understand there's a real economic crisis happening for so many of you and almost all of you individually and for the organizations. And we're not going to take that for granted. We won't forget that. And we have a lot of work to do, and we'll get it done. So tonight's the first step. We'll follow back up with the communication, summarize anything. So if we missed anything, we can correct that. And I look forward to working with the councils and all of you in the community. One, to address the immediate needs and concerns, stabilize everyone individually and financially, and have some fun thinking about the future and how we're going to build upon everything we've done. And we will get to the other side of this crisis at some point, and we will come together. We'll celebrate in close quarters. We'll drink. We'll be merry out in the middle of the streets. We'll have a great time. I can't wait for that day. But I really appreciate, on behalf of the council, myself, our staff, thanks for urging this meeting. I'm looking forward to the next one, as many as we have to have, but I'm looking forward to the work. Okay? All right, folks, have a good night. We will follow up tomorrow. Thanks.
Thanks very much.
Bye-bye.
You have a great night.
Thank you.